Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller, and as Chair of the Board, I welcome you to this August 1st, 2023 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Road Commissioners. Our office coordinator, Aaron Smith, will describe how our meetings operate, how to access the agenda, and how people may participate remotely. Aaron.
Thanks, Chair Fuller. There are multiple ways to make public comment during today's working session, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. If you're here in person and would like to make public comment, please fill out the sign-in sheet now. If you're joining us virtually, we will ask you to raise your hand at the appropriate time in the agenda. If you're joining us virtually and are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our communications manager will help you troubleshoot. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted to wcroads.org in the next few days. There are printed copies of today's meeting agenda on the table near the front door, and it is also posted on our website. And now I'll turn it over to Chair Fuller.
Thank you, Aaron. I now call this August 1st, 2023 regular 2023 working session to order and ask Aaron to call the roll.
Chair Barb Fuller.
Present.
Vice Chair Rod Green.
Present.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas is absent for roll call vote, but will be present later in the meeting. Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Present.
And then Commissioner Jeff Smurs.
Present.
And the following directors are in attendance: Managing Director Cheryl Siddle, Assistant Director of Engineering Brent Schlack, Director of Operations Adam Lape, and Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Thank you, Aaron. First on our agenda is public participation. This is the time set aside on the agenda to receive comments from the public. This is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes to address the board. Aaron will explain how people may be recognized to offer comments.
Thanks, Chair Fuller. Since this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendees, we will take turns between those attending in person and virtually. For virtual attendees, we have provided some instructions on the screen on how to participate and make public comment. If you're attending this meeting virtually and would like to make public comment, please raise your hand now. If you dialed into the meeting from your phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Our communications manager will unmute virtual participants with raised hands one at a time and will announce your username or last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Please share your name and address before beginning your comments. And then for our in-person attendees, we will start with those who've signed up on the sign-in sheet as you walked in. If you didn't sign in, you're still welcome to make public comment, but we'll notify you when it is your turn. At this time, we do not have anyone that would like to make public comment.
Very good. We will move along. At this point, I will ask our Managing Director, Cheryl Siddle, to take the ball and then help us with the facilities update intro.
Sure. Well, this morning is pretty much going to be the Adam Lape show between facilities and equipment. Although I say that Adam will be the first one to acknowledge the fact that an awful lot of people helped him get to this point. So with that, I'll hand it over to Adam.
Good morning. Adam Lape, Director of Operations. And yes, Cheryl is correct. There are quite a few of us that kind of keep the lights on here and the wheels spinning around. So we're going to highlight some of those people today and talk about some facilities and some of our equipment for today's update. All righty. So we'll cover agenda here really quick. We're going to meet our operations administration team. We don't get to talk about them much, and they really are behind the curtain and it kind of keep the things going for us. You know, we make sure we have the funding, and there are 100 people that keep it all going out on the road. So I want to talk about the admin team specific, superintendents and then clerks, and work our way into the facilities update. So we'll meet that team as well. We'll also speak about the state of the grounds, some of our future wish lists, and then we'll start talking about the state of the fleet. We'll meet that shop team as well. Powerful group keeps us on the road. It's a small group, but they keep a lot of equipment moving for us. So we'll highlight some of the equipment statuses and then work on some of the budget and the proposal for next year. And then we have a few slides at the end to give a little update on our GPS AVL demo that we'd like to perform this fall. And then finally questions. And then after that, get out in the parking lot and actually see some equipment.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
GPS, I think we're pretty much all familiar with the GPS acronym. What's AVL, Adam?
It's automated vehicle locating.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, and as the curtain draws back there, Ms. Obashaw will be honest, and Ken and Jared, if they're in the room, which we'll probably see them out with the equipment, the two gentlemen on the side would probably echo that Tiffany is the Oz behind the curtain for us. She keeps a lot of stuff going for us. She coordinates quite a bit of our material. She's working with vendors. She's handling the invoicing. Also, every single local road agreement that we touch in operations department, Tiffany makes sure is correct and gets that sent off and submitted. So she is great to have. She keeps us moving. So we love having Tiffany with us. On the left side of the screen, we have Ken Harris. So he's superintendent. So him and I have been here for about 10 years now. Then Jared Powers, he's got about 10 years of experience as well, a little over that in our operations group. And he also was a weighmaster for a while. And then filled in for me as I was able to step up upon Jim's retirement last year. So we have quite the powerful team that keeps us moving. So this group is also Ken and Jared's main thing in the winter. Those two are the ones kind of setting us up, scheduling when we have the long weekend hours, making sure we have enough overlap to cover all the road system. And then unfortunately, sometimes out in the middle of the night, trying to see when it's time for us to actually come in. So those two are quite busy in the winter season for us. They do great work. We're pretty powerful and we have a lot of trust in everybody. So we're able to function as a pretty good group. Then summertime comes and that group takes off and runs with spreading stone and our projects, our chip seal and seal coating. We keep them pretty busy. So they are phenomenal. It's a powerful team to work with. We're very lucky to have that group. So wanted to make that little highlight today before we kind of get on to the rest of the show. And you'll catch up with some of them. Tiffany's called in today remote, but she probably won't be out there in the parking lot, but we'll have her come visit another meeting.
Any questions, commissioners?
No.
Proceed.
All right. Oops. There we go. All righty, so we'll jump into the facilities update here. And we'll meet that team quickly. Dennis Bussey, Will Harris, Kevin Heller, and Randy Schneider. All four of them are busy installing our stand-up desk options right now for the 25 that ordered those this year. So they're very busy. We'll probably see them throughout the hallways as we're kind of making our way out to the parking lot. They're a tremendously powerful group. There's really three people that are out working every day. Dennis is kind of doing the planning. But all in all, those four people keep a lot of light bulbs on and a lot of the doors working. And they also come in and get the snow off the ground. So there's quite a bit to highlight what they do for us. So as I just kind of noted, the facilities group provides general buildings and grounds maintenance, and that's year round. So they, in turn, responding to just emergencies that we have with our system, whether it be building or weather emergencies, they come in for snow and ice. They're here with our crew, likely, get in ahead of time because they want to clear off some space so we can get people in here safely in and out of the parking lot. So they continue to develop, they continue to get better. We keep buying bigger and better equipment for them. So they do quite a bit of work with three individuals. So we're appreciative of that. They are very much busy throughout the year. Summertime as well, then they handle mowing and then our day-to-day maintenance. And also some of their responsibilities are to manage the building contracts that we have with some of our vendors, because obviously with a team of only 4 people, we cannot do everything. So we need to bring some vendors in, as you guys have kind of seen through board minutes and some updates, that we have to rely on some others to kind of keep us moving at times. We can diagnose and triage things, but we usually need professionals specific to HVAC there, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Those units are very complicated. We have to spend some time with professionals to let those kind of do their thing. It used to be a little easier. Now things are stepping up a little bit better with the building automation systems. That's the BAS that you see in the parentheses there. That's basically a system that monitors itself. We get updates, we get a little prompting basically on the computer, as opposed to years previous where things would, fail and you would basically have to wait for somebody to hear a noise or something not to work. Now we're able to get with these new systems that have came out over the past few decades here, and new systems kind of prompt us when we need to do something. So it's really cool. Some of the schematics and diagrams that Dennis has to work through. We know where to go specifically to check something. And then we can diagnose that and then just have a vendor go right to the same spot, as opposed to just a service call, where they come out and just kind of look at it and try to find what's wrong. we usually know exactly what's wrong with all of them. So that helps us, and in turn saves a little money in the long run. As opposed to just replacing parts, you're able to actually replace what's broken. And then our alarms and security, we manage that as well. IT comes into play a little bit with us there. Traffic and safety department as well. You know, we utilize some of our cameras. We utilize IT for our servers and our cloud-based systems to kind of get us in and out of the building. So some of the changes that you've seen here recently with the card readers to get in and out of the board meeting room here specific, those are all updates that Dennis and his team set up and then coordinated with IT as well to get those installed. And then finally, which is near and dear to everybody's heart, is housekeeping. So we have to maintain that contract. And that's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of people moving through this building. So we have a lot of feedback that we have to give to the vendor as well. So that keeps us pretty busy, but we got to keep it clean. And as you've seen, we've cleaned the floors here recently and some of the emails with that. So there's a lot of coordination in it to try to make sure people are kind of, in this case, off the floors when we're here to seal them up and clean them up. So a lot goes into that. So Dennis is very busy with that coordination effort. And then a facilities overview in general, on the left side of the screen, those are basically our areas that house people, and we'll show a map here in a second, but that's where our staff essentially comes out of. Things on the right side of the screen, those areas in facilities, so to speak, are actually where we store material, we stage material, we'll leave equipment. There's a lot of benefit to having these out lots, so to speak. And then the one at the top, obviously having our own brine well saves us tremendous amounts of money in the long run. We're very, very lucky to have that. Some agencies don't have that. We'd love to have more, but one works for us. We capitalize on that and can save quite a bit of money with that. So here, as we transition to this screen, you'll see some orange stars. The orange stars are where our stars come out of. It's probably the easiest way to kind of lay that up there for everybody to understand. Those are the facilities that bring our people out, where our equipment's going to come out of, primarily where they're going to be serviced, maintained, stored, and then obviously where we park every day, our personal vehicles. But the black triangles, those are our outlots. So that's where we're going to store that material, stage the material, park equipment overnight. That's where those kind of come into play. And most of those are vacated pits where we used to mine material out many, many years ago that we'd spread on the roads long before any of us kind of worked here. They've all just been left dormant, and that's fine. So we use them for staging at this point. And then in the top left corner of the screen, there's an orange dot there. That's our well brine, or excuse me, our brine well there. Kind of in the northwest of the county there, but very, very close to M52. So we're able to get our material and then kind of get back to where we need to go relatively quickly.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
Yeah.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, the brine well, is that in this picture where that,
Yeah, so it's an orange dot at the top left of the screen. It might be a little hard to see on the printout.
I was just wondering how it looked in person.
Oh, well, I tell you what, I can get some pictures and I'll try to bring those back. When we go outside, I'll try to grab a couple pictures.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's in theory, it's just a tank corral. So a
tank.
handful of tanks, and then
Okay.
there's just one mechanical well. Kind of like you used to see a long time ago, like an oil field well. Same concept, it's just a mechanical pump. Yep, and so it's gyroscopically driven and it just draws material out, and then we inject water with it from a normal well, water well, and then that gets us down to our solution, and then that gets pumped up into the tanks. Yeah, so nice and simple. Sometimes simple is good.
Yes,
It's
you're
nice and
right.
simple. And we continually update it and try to maintain it. It's aging, so we will have to invest in it here probably in the near future. In whether it be investing in the mechanical side of it or transitioning to an electrical driven pump, really would be yet to be determined, but we probably have quite a few years of service out of that well. It's a few thousand feet deep, so it's in the ground quite a way. So yeah, the brine well it's great for us. It does so much for us in the summer because it's expensive to have that all trucked in. And thankfully our vendors do honor basically what it costs us to get it. They charge that. So that's a good thing. It's relatively equal, but we like to get it out of the ground that we don't have to pay for. We only pay for basically the electric. So that's the plan. So every time it draws something up, it's saving this agency money. Basically every gallon it pulls out. So it's great for us, but we have to update it and keep it moving forward. So yeah, I can get you some actual pictures.
Thank you.
Pretty simple. And so then the main yard, so the administration building here that we're in, that was built in 2000. So that's kind of the building you see on the right side of the screen. This is an aerial shot. The reason we use this one, it's going to look very familiar to most of you on the board. We've used that as we talked about the master planning over the past few years. You've seen kind of sketches basically depicting that same picture. So it was nice to have an aerial photo that we could show. The vehicle parking and shop, that was built in 1963 and 1964. That's basically the L-shaped black roof in the middle of the picture there. We are outgrowing it, but we make it work. So we've made some other improvements outside of that building to help make it easier for us to move around in there. So that's what 2023 was about. Obviously the material storage building, which we'll touch on and we spent quite a bit of time talking about. That's going to be on the left side of the photo. You'll see some culverts that look white on this picture. That's basically where this new salt shed is going to be. We can take some of you out there this afternoon if you'd like to see that as well. But specific to the diesel exhaust fluid, so DEF as we refer to it, that's used in our modern diesel motors. That's used as an after treatment to basically burn off the emissions to make them more environmentally friendly motors. So there's a lot goes into that. The DEF, the exhaust fluid is very hydroscopic, so it's always drawing moisture by design. So we need a good place to store it. We used to have to keep it in the building and wheel a 55-gallon drum to every truck that needs it. And usually anywhere between 10 to 15 trucks now that we've modernized our fleet, our grade-alls, our graders, things that we're going to talk about later today, all need that diesel exhaust fluid in it. Well, we had to go by hand to every single unit. So when we built the Northeast Service Center, which we'll talk about next, we built in a cabinet that was at the fuel island that's heated, so it's climate controlled, that we can fill right when we refuel the trucks. So that's what we did here this year to eliminate that cluster in the garage and give us a little more space to work. So it's all about trying to maximize the space we have because our walls are not growing and going to go any further out anytime soon. So we're trying to be resourceful and thoughtful of trying to kind of place a lot of material and equipment in there. So later on in the presentation, when we're talking about equipment, you'll see a good aerial photo of inside the building and how busy it gets in the wintertime. So that'll kind of highlight back to this, why it was so important to build that facility, that little box facility out there at our fuel island. So now we can refuel and refill that at the same time.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, the DEF dispensing upgrade, is that the same solution that is used in the diesel trucks now? Like,
Correct.
yeah,
Yep. Yeah, that's just the technical term for it.
right.
But yeah, so same thing that any diesel truck on the road today would have to run. That's that same basically fluid.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
kind of an ammonia base, but it's that hydroscopic. The goal is to draw that moisture out.
Right.
But you also need to fill them before the vehicle cools down, especially how wet we get, because we'll put about 2,000 pounds of ice on the truck during the course of 16 hours plowing. So all that moisture, that fluid is trying to draw that all night long, and you can end up with just water on the top part of the tank. So we're very, very proactive and really require the drivers to always fill up when they can, especially as that unit's warm with all the snow dripping off of it.
So do you go by how many miles or how often?
For filling.
Yeah.
So
for
the
DEF.
machine, yeah, whatever the power unit, so the engine that's driving it, it has its own settings, what the
Oh, okay,
federal government requires.
right.
So the computer and all the certain
Well-
injectors, they manage all that. So we don't
Right.
really have like a per gallon per mile. I'm sure Jeff Mann, which we'll introduce him here in a little bit, he probably tracks that. He's very good with like tracking that. So him and Mike Livesey probably have tracking on that, but per mile, per gallon, per hour kind of varies depending on the work we're doing.
That's
If we're
good.
idling, for example, on the freeway at an accident and the truck's just idling,
Mhm.
you may not go through as much or you may go through more because it's having to inject that to burn off that soot. Whereas opposed to out plowing snow, the motor's really hot. And so it treats most of it, it burns that because the exhaust system is made to like basically recirculate all the exhaust to try to
Right.
scrub it or clean it out before it goes into the atmosphere. So you may use less when you're driving really, really hard,
Right.
pushing snow. So it kind of varies.
So we have a lot of diesel trucks.
Do we? Yes, yes.
Yeah, it-
All but really our light fleet is diesel.
Mhm.
Everything we have, with the exception of a few brush chippers, everything else is diesel. And
Well,
just a
that's-
handful of unleaded things.
That's good then how you're doing the DEF and,
It's really helpful for us because
Yeah.
every piece of equipment, especially heavy equipment, has to fuel here at this place, this
Mhm.
facility, because most of it's stored here.
Mhm.
And same thing with our external yards, in time we'll get that to Chelsea and Manchester, but for now, with only having 6 to 7 items that need that, they can still use their carts to fill their stuff.
good.
But when we have upwards of 20 here, that would need.
Yeah, you need something like.
Yeah, a little more efficient. Yeah, and we can kind of work out of both sides of it. So we
Yeah.
can kind of park both trucks. Everyone can be fueling and kind of refilling at the same time. So very similar to the material storage building where we have options to load and fill with liquid brine for multiple people at the same time. That's the reason for the size. So all kind of along the same lines of improving efficiencies and just giving our staff more opportunity rather than wait in line when they can go be doing what they want to do, which is out plow snow, have fun with the equipment, as opposed to sitting in line to fill up. So
Thank you, Adam.
you're welcome. Okay, well, the Southeast Service Center, so known as the SESC here for some of us, but that was built in 1999. So that's a great building. Starting to age a little bit. So we're starting to up the repairs and up the maintenance and kind of modernize some of the things, some of the devices there. So in 2023, our goal is to get the roof repaired. So just to, ensure we're not having any leaks. We don't want any water in on us. There's been a few leaks here and there in the building portion of it. So it looks kind of like the block building right in the middle of the screen. There've been some leaks there time to time, whether it be the transition between the main storage building, which is steel above the blocks, compared to just the timber structure of the normal, I might as well call it the admin portion of the building. There've been some leaks there, so try to keep that tightened up so we're not getting water in on our electronics and just our building itself. And then, oh, go ahead, Rod.
Just wonder how many people approximately work out of the Southeast Service Center?
Southeast Service Center, if we're fully staffed, would have probably, let's see, I think 18 max employees counting foremen and then 2 shop technicians. Right now, we only have 1 shop technician there, but there are 2 foremen, and then the District 2 group has 12 employees, and then the District 5 group has 6 employees. So I guess if we actually full, it'd be what, 1920. So
Is that your largest center?
yeah, aside from this building.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and hence kind of the service center title that I think they were going with back in the 90s when they were prepping this building. Little bigger, able to have a wash bay, a mechanics bay, fuel island. So that's kind of what set us up for the service center titles. In the next slide, you'll see the Northeast Service Center, little smaller in design, just 1 crew, but same kind of a one-stop shop, so to speak, where you can get everything from. But yeah, so the Southeast Service Center is our next biggest facility with staff and equipment as well. So
Adam, like you said, there's 2 crews that run out of there. Our District 2 crew, which services Ypsilanti and Pittsfield townships, so 2 of our more urban townships. And then our District 5 crew, which services Augusta, York, and Saline townships, runs out of there as well.
yeah, so we keep very busy out of there. Now, before the Northeast Service Center, we actually had a 3rd crew, which was District 6, was housed there for a while. And then that's why we wanted to get them to the northeast portion of the county. It was just too much drive time to go
Right.
back and forth. So that's why we acquired the property in the late 90s, I believe, maybe early 2000s.
Yeah, I
that
thought it was
property came about. And then eventually inevitably building in 17 and 18, that structure up there that we'll talk about here a little bit later. But so yeah, to keep this building functioning, we have so many pieces of equipment. There's probably at least 20 pieces of equipment that are in that building that are housed in that parking structure there. The HVAC, so the heating, ventilation, air conditioning units, they're called makeup air units. Those are the big ones that you'll see like on the back of really big parking buildings, and they force a bunch of air in. Traditionally known from a manufacturer name as like the rapid unit, because that was a manufacturer at the time. What it does, it forces a bunch of air in, warm air in the room for us, which is important in the winter, to kind of get things, have an environment so they can melt off a little bit. So those units are really important. They're aging there. So we started preliminary design this year to replace those 2 units. So that's very important to us in the wintertime because it's quite challenging to have a truck be cold and basically frozen for so many hours. It's pretty hard on the equipment. And we can't, when the ice doesn't melt, we can't visually see if we're having any malfunctions or something's failed. So it's a little more challenging. So that's why those things are so important to us, and they wear out. They get worked really, really hard in the wintertime. Summertime backs down a little bit on them because they're just moving air for us. But in the wintertime, they have to heat up quite a big space routinely because the doors open and close as trucks are coming in and out. So they're used quite a bit. So they're important to us. So that's kind of our roof repairs. And that is a very important preliminary design that we've initiated this year. And then just the continued improving aggregate storage areas, sometimes referred to as concrete bin blocks. So we don't have a picture, but behind that building, we store aggregate. And we'd like to work in ways to organize that and just make it so we can put more stuff in a smaller area. Not always the easiest thing to do, but it has to be continuous. And you'll hear that theme as we talk about some of the other out yards. You know, we only have the footprints that we have to work with right now that we're given. So we're trying to up our level of service, and by that, it inevitably takes new aggregate, different aggregates, or just more in general, more aggregate. So it takes up more space. So we need these bin blocks in some places just to corral that, keep it in one place. A good comparison would be for here. So because we've discussed it quite a bit, when our current salt dome is demolished, we'll be left with a ring or some type of bin blocking system where that on top of its footprint that's currently there. We're going to use that to store material. And that's even here, we have so much space. You know, we have 100 acres here. So you can imagine 10 acres, 5 acres, 6 acres, you know, it takes quite a bit of effort to kind of keep all our material in one spot. So that's kind of what our reasoning for improving elevated storage areas at a lot of these facilities. And it gives us a cleaner look. I mean, you know, sometimes rocks aren't exactly, they're a bit unsightly, you know, so we try to moderate that a little bit. You know, we try to be conscious of our neighbors. And so that's kind of that push that we're working towards right now.
Commissioner Yamas?
So we took, the commissioners here, I believe, took a tour of the Southeast Service Center. Was that in 21 or 20, I believe?
You may have, it might have been northeast as well,
I
though.
remember.
It was Pittsfield Township. That's the Southeast.
Yep,
Southeast,
yep,
right.
that would be southeast, yeah.
So, and I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
So you said when we crush we're going to crush
The salt dome, yes,
The-
so.
and you were saying the footprint, we're going to put what there? I didn't hear that.
No, okay, so I'll kind of reiterate that a little bit since I was kind of mumbling, I apologize. Here at this main yard, we're building a new material storage building. The current salt dome will be demolished. When it's demolished, it'll be left with either the existing ring
Right.
that's there, the foundation ring, or if that's damaged, then bin blocks will be put in that place. And we'll use that to stockpile material.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the example that, you know, we have essentially, you know, 100 acres here and probably 80 of it, you know, working acres. And we need that much space here. So you can imagine smaller facilities, we only have 8 to 10 acres. We really have to corral everything and keep it as close as we can. So that was that
Okay.
just explanation I was using.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Green?
Does each service center have a salt bin or just one main bin?
Yeah, we have salt storage at every building, different sizes though.
Right.
Yeah, so they reduced down. Our next largest would be the Southeast Service Center. And then moving down from that would be the Northeast Service Center, and then Chelsea and Manchester yards are even smaller than that, just simply because smaller trucks, less need when you're more out at, you know, you don't have as much pavement. We have a lot of unpaved roads. So that material isn't always, you know, we don't need salt specific for that. We'll be using grit or some type of aggregate for an abrasive as opposed to using salt. So we can store much less. So we don't need the big bulk storage.
Okay.
And then here's Northeast Service Center. So this was built in 2017 and we finally got in it in 2018. Very much our newest and our pride and joy. It's a beautiful building. We are incredibly lucky to have something like that. We're envied by many with a building like that. As you can see, we titled this a service center as well. And that is because there is room that you could have mechanics there. There's an overhead crane. We have quite a bit of storage. We have mezzanine areas. We also have a larger salt storage or material storage building. And then obviously all the other things that we need, wash bays and covered parking and fuel islands. And this is where we came across that diesel exhaust fluid cabinet that we've updated here. We basically have the exact same one here now. So that's what kind of prompted us and showed us how efficient that can make you to get that out of the building. So that was a nice addition to have. So in 2023, we're still preventative maintenance. It has a little age, but it is much newer than many of the buildings we have. So we're just going to keep it that way. What we do have to do this year, we have to replace a fire pump panel. And what that is basically the fire pump panel that's inside a nice little pump house that fills our fire suppression system. Our fire suppression system still works, but this panel needs to be replaced. So what we'll do with our internal crews, our heavy equipment crew, the building is built with basically pins on the roof, and you can pick up the little roof off. It's probably a 10 by 10 structure. You can set that roof off there, and then we can go down in there and replace the panel, and then out we go. It has a man door, but you can't get the panel into the man door. So that's kind of the project. So it's a little bit challenging, but pretty simple. At least it's designed to be maintained that way. And the design's beyond me. Why it's built like that, don't know, but at least it has nice little eyelets that we can hook it up and lift it off. So heavy equipment will get to do something off the road this year too. So it'll be kind of fun for that crew.
Yeah.
Commissioner McCollum.
Is this, so you're saying that the way that they put out fires is through a system?
Yeah, so our fire suppression system at this location, just to the left on the picture, actually, you can't see it. But there's looks like a little doghouse. It's like 10 by 10, like a little shed. There's actually a well there. And what happens if there were to be a catastrophic event and the fire suppression system started pulling water, it can only pull so much so quick. So this well just continually fills that. And so you could essentially, I mean, it's not forever, but you could for a long time try to suppress the fire. And the building is very much modernized. There are specific zones. There are doors in the middle of the building that we could close, like if something was happening in the parking garage versus up in the front where we kind of park the trucks right now, but could be the service center. There's a lot of option there. So we needed something, the design called for something that could get a lot of water for a long time. And so that's why the pump and the well was all put in there.
So that's good. It's water. It's not a chemical that comes out.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We were lucky to have that on site, and they were able to drill that well down, and we use that as well. So try to keep it up, keep it going. That's the main thing, is just make sure it's ready for when it's needed, but it still works. Like, we have no fear that's why we haven't, this is an emergency, but it's something we want to complete this season.
Commissioner Green.
Yes, just wondering, what is the green structure there?
That's actually a generator. So that's a generator set. So when power is severed to that facility, so basically out the road when we lose power, there's big switch gear, and it's the same thing we have here as well. That generator can run that whole facility.
Okay.
Everything, even in the back, the material storage building, lights are on like we never lost power. So it is, in theory, self-sufficient at that point. Great. So yeah, we were lucky to get that built in when we built the building itself. They're very expensive. We have all but one that have some type of gen set to keep us moving when we have these weather events. And then we use some of our light towers in some of the other buildings to kind of supplemental power. They're generators as well, much smaller than this and mobile, but so we have some option with that. But that was a great opportunity to have that. So that keeps us going. So, excuse me, for example, last week we had some big weather.
That's right.
We spent about 10 seconds in the dark here when the power was deciding what it wanted to do. And so the switchgear could actually sense what was going on and started the generator here, and it ran until Saturday afternoon. And we were here just doing normal work. Nothing really affected us. Same thing in Northeast Service Center when power was, severed throughout that area. Lights are on, and we were able to, warm up our lunches and keep our drinks cool because we were here for a handful of hours during that event. So we had full functionality there. We get fuel, we get everything we need. So they really are standalone service centers with these new technologies for these generators that we have. And then finally, if there aren't any other questions with that, just real quick, we did some parking lot lighting improvements, really just switching out and just improving what we could and what we've had issues with since we built it. So just, fixing little electrical glitches here and there that the contractors helped us with, and then we wanted to kind of upgrade that a little bit. So we really haven't changed any lighting or, done anything different. It's all in the same structure, same poles that they were on. We just improved the system. And then now we'll get out towards the west side of the county and some of our actual outpost facilities that were built. And as you can see, the Chelsea Yard, that is in downtown Chelsea. It's west of downtown. So we are on that footprint, and very much, as you can see, it's a little bigger font because improving the aggregate storage area at that facility is really important to us. So that's kind of what we want to do. The building itself is doing okay. We got to repair the roofs and keep the leaks off us, things like that. But the heating and ventilation system is working pretty good. So yeah, we're okay, but we're in a small area, so we have to manage that.
Yeah.
So really our push for 2023 is try to start finding, innovative ways to corral some of that material, just so we can get more for the crew. And this yard specifically is where we like to moderate our look for our neighbors. We're very much different than a house beside us, so to speak, on either side. So our backyard's a little bigger there, and it's a little noisier.
Commissioner Schmers.
So I know that there's been complaints from Chelsea residents. Is it mainly noise, or is it look, or is it both?
It's kind of all of the above, honestly. I think it's been individually each one of those, but here recently we heard some from last year was kind of just everything. Just not entirely loving us in the area, but thankfully just a few residents, not, the whole city isn't really concerned because, the city's only a few blocks away, but they're set out a little bit further to the north, a little bit more behind the factory. So they're just a little more camouflaged. Just unfortunately, we've been there for quite some time, and we've been there long before 1961, but this building was just built in 1960. And then early 2000s, we updated that material storage building there. Another state agreement that we've had, similar to what we had here, much obviously smaller build, but that's on the right side of the screen as well. So yeah, thankfully, not too many constituents have, voiced concern with us being in the area, but the aggregate is a quick, easy way to maybe mitigate some of that.
We have
concern.
some vegetative screening right now. but
Yeah,
this
so
will
there's
be a
some
way-
That's
evergreens.
gonna be my next question is maybe a live wall or something,
Mhm.
live fence wall.
Yeah, so right now, and it's really hard to see in the screen, but we do have some evergreens that kind of shield us a little bit. And then our goal would be to end with some type of, not a full structure, but just a few feet to kind of, I want to say camouflage it, but really just blend us in with just the trees.
Soften it, so.
Yeah, soften that look a little bit is probably a good term.
And then the backup alarms, we really had very little control over
Yeah.
since we.
Yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
OSHA's
responded
not a
and
fan if you
everything.
turn those off.
Yeah.
No, we
exactly.
try our best, and thankfully we're able to, minimize that, because when we load in early hours of the night or morning, however you want to consider it, I guess we're here kind of both times of the day, but the really early morning hours when we're trying to be conscious of that. So we kind of, stage the loader in the best area we can, or we're not backing up a bunch, or try to keep the trucks loaded like at 8 o'clock the night before if we know what we're going to do the next day. So the crew is really good about trying to mitigate those concerns and those noises, but inevitably there's time that we end up making some noise, but
Looking
pretty
at that
conscious
picture,
about
is there any way to move the material to the back side of the building on the track side?
yeah, so we've talked a little bit about it. There's a retention basin back there that kind of stops us from some of that. But we've talked about maybe trying to shift it even to the east side where those two older properties there, they like having us there right now. So that's a little bit different. And there's a little bit more of like a live wall there. The fencing has, shrubbery and things growing through it, kind of vines. We would never want to go to the west, but we do want to try to move it a little bit. It's just really going to be how much can we fit in that space? That dictates what we'll be able to do.
I'm sure no one's complaining when there's a weather event.
That's right.
No, yeah, thankfully, yeah, we kind of get a star in our cap every time, or a feather in our cap, because we're very, very good and we're very, very responsive to that area. And the majority of the constituents out there, know that and respect that, thankfully. So still not always an easy conversation, but we're conscious of it. So that's the best thing. We just keep working towards it and little improvements every time we can. And that's really why it's kind of our goal with the facilities group.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sure.
Commissioner McCollum.
The concrete bin blocks, how tall are they?
It ranges, it depends. Normally they'd be about the height of this desk. So 2.5 to 3 feet tall is kind of like industry standard. And then they're made interlocking. So then you could stack them in theory. It's not as far as you want, but you could stack 5, 6, 8 rows of them. Our Northeast Service Center has about 4 or 5 rows stacked together. And so that'll get you 10, 15 feet in the air pretty quickly. But really it depends what you want to do with it. And they make different kinds as well. But when you buy the interlocking blocks like that, you eliminate the need to have to drive posts in the ground or to make like an actual structure where you have I-beams that hold them together, steel beams that hold them together. So we try to use the integral ones, the interlocking, because then we can move them somewhere else if we ever have to.
Okay. Because I was thinking if you go east to the back
Mhm.
and you put the blocks there, the concrete bin blocks, if you go up, then it's kind of like putting a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be a little bit of shielding, and that's kind of what we reviewed a few times before. If we could build kind of a shield like that, that's helpful then. Because then it also shields from the noise, because if you're just loading out of there, the buckets don't make too much noise, so to speak. The noise is kind of at the motor, behind the loader. So yeah, there's some room to move there, but not as much as we'd love, but we work with the footprint we have, but the crew does a great job in District 3 about being conscious of that. They're all very much concerned about that because we don't want to not have to be there.
Yeah, in a perfect world, I mean, we do the absolute best we can to make this work. I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. But if money was no object in a perfect world, we would move out of the city of Chelsea. This footprint is too small for us. We were there in the 1920s when the city was not there, and now the city is there around us, and it's just not ideal. But again, that's assuming money is no object and that there was property that was just easy to acquire. So we're going to make this work for the time being, but that is something that should be at least thought about for future for the northwest part of our county.
Yeah.
Commissioner Yamas.
So that was my question, and I think we've discussed it before
Mhm.
about a plan, coming up with a plan for the future.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, the question was, is there one? But as I was talking about it, I didn't know if there was a plan like there is here, a 5-year plan out.
We don't have a master plan for this site other than a desire to move out of the city of Chelsea.
That would be the basis for that, is just if we were to do anything, it would just be moving locations, but that's as far as it's going at that point. If any of that comes around and starts developing, that would be small, but smaller than the Northeast Service Center, but similar. You would probably end up somewhere like that design, trying to match our look. Kind of coordinate the buildings throughout the county as we could, but quite a bit out there and considerable money.
Commissioner Smers.
Is there one of the quarries that are no longer being used is anywhere around there that's usable or?
Not really specifically like right there, kind of north off of M52 off of North Territorial Road. So kind of way north, and then south off of M52, which is some of the areas we've recently discussed in some other sessions.
Yeah, we have our own Ottawa pit, which is not quite ideal as far as the
So
location
in
goes.
theory, that would be a third one, you'd be
Yeah.
Dexter, Pinckney and North Territorial area. So there are some options there, but there's quite a bit of development, and in all of those areas, there are no utilities in that area at this point, no sewer, no water. So you're verging on like the benefit of, okay, a well, how long does a well last, and for water, because we use quite a bit of water, obviously. Yeah.
But we have at least talked about it, and so I do think that we have staff that are in that area regularly,
Mhm.
including obviously the district foreman, that if
Yeah.
just this ideal site, came on the market, that we certainly.
Yeah, we're eyes wide open with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we've kind of discussed that, is there would be quite the lift to get to those areas, but we do actually have property, which is a good start in case we ever do have to move that direction. Thank you. You're welcome. All righty, so now to the Manchester yard. So that's in the Manchester area, obviously just north of town there, right off of M52. So this building was built in 1948. We have been there. We did some digging last week. We've been there since the 20s. before they really took pictures and different kind of notes. It was kind of a cool history project when Dennis and I and Kurt Roche were looking through that. So that building is aging. You do know last year we had quite a few discussions. We did replace the roof. So we've got the water off of us. The crew likes the location. The village, they enjoy having us where we are. So that's a good thing. We're kind of off, off the beaten path a little bit there. But we're sitting on N52, but we're far enough off the road that we're behind the houses there. So that's helpful in that area. With that being said, it's an old building, so there's some work to be done there. So we've worked on some HVAC upgrades, so make sure the air conditioning works and that unit is actually filling the room with nice cool air that's not full of moisture and things that are detrimental to our, our computers, and just our people don't want to be sitting in a wet room all the time. So we made some improvements with that this year. And then also what we have to do is replace the main floor drain system. So as you can see in some of those pictures there, on the left side of the left picture, the bottom of the screen there's a lot of corrosion that in those old drain systems, because they're cast iron and they start to corrode, they basically grow. And you really struggle getting those grates back in there. And they're cast as well. So with the trucks and equipment repetitively for, 50 years, 100 years going over these things, they fail. And it's hard for us to find specific ones now. They don't make that anymore because they've modernized that system a little bit. So we've done some of that work here in the main yard. We've done a little bit at the Southeast Service Center, and unfortunately Manchester's drainage system is actually failing. It still functions and moves and conveys the liquid to the oil water separator, but the system to be able to clean it, and you see the adjacent areas in the picture on the right, you verge on like a trip hazard there. You see the gaps between the framing and the actual concrete where we've tried to repair it. It's just, at this point, it's beyond repair. And we're running a risk when Dennis's team goes out there and the crew, that they have a hard time pulling those grates up. So in turn, we can't get it as clean as we'd like, which then in turn corrodes the bottom and obstructs the drainage. And so that's what's kind of brought us to this point. And it's no one's fault. It's no lack of maintenance. It's just simply aged. And so that's our plan for this year. We kind of had to bump that up. We didn't want to have to do it this year, but we had to move that up. So that's some of the budget adjustments that you see we highlighted in our narrative here in the last few weeks that you've all read.
Commissioner McCollum.
Just, thank you, Madam Chair. I just curious of how much the grates weigh, because you're talking about cast iron.
They're heavy, probably anywhere between 20 and 50 pounds, depending on which ones. Those shorter ones are probably 2.5, maybe 18 inches, 2 foot, in length. So they're probably at least 40 pounds.
How many?
Boy, there's probably 40 or 50 down through there. I mean, there's quite a few, because you got to think we're about 80 foot long. Building wise. Yeah. So there's quite a bit there to be popped out. And, and that's physical labor. It's rough. It's a little dangerous on the fingers, because inevitably, you can't always do it mechanically. At some point you have to physically move it with your body parts. And that's a little dangerous for Dennis's groups in the fingers. And so we do our best and we stay as safe as we can. We have some equipment and some things that we can pop those out with, but not always the case. And when they get to this point of failure, they're there. You got to wrestle them a little bit. So a newer modernized system will be much lighter, maybe even like a poly, so basically a plastic insert that'll go in there. So then very easy to pop out. They make little trowels that you can push down through there with water behind it that'll clean the system pretty quick without depositing it in our oil water separator, where we actually can vac it out. And we have some contractors and vendors that come help us with that, clean our drains routinely. And then we also have some vacuum chuck, obviously, that we can do it with as well. But they take it and get rid of it since it has inevitably some oils in it. So they kind of recycle it as needed. All righty, so now we'll get into some of our wish lists. Check, there we go. So next year, our goal is to modernize our water fountain fleet, we'll call it. Early 2000s.
And before we go too far, just to clarify, this is what you'll start to see for next year. Plans.
Yeah, so our wish list
budget, when we have the budget discussions at that in November.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought we'd give you a sneak preview while we're talking about facilities of why those would be on the list for next year's budget.
So as you can tell, and you've probably filled up water bottles before out here in the main lobby, we have two of these throughout the county. So we have this unit here in the main lobby, and then we have the Northeast Service Center that kind of showed us this unit and how much we like it. You can fill your water bottles there. It's more modernized. We obviously have a handful throughout the main building on the left side, that picture there, and they work fine, they function fine, but there are some interesting things we can use. And a lot of people use water bottles to drink with, so they can stay at their desk and get their water for the day. So we like having those. They're automated. You basically set your bottle up there, it fills, and then off you go. So our plan is to do this throughout the county. They may not look exactly the same in Chelsea and Manchester when we're done, simply because the water fountains now are freestanding. So we'll probably have to move them or get a different type. But for Southeast Service Center, we'll be able to build that throughout this facilities. We'll be able to add those basically at the drinking stations that are here now. So above the fountain and downstairs by the bathrooms and the assembly room. And then we have one fountain out here in the parking structure for the employees, which will be really good for filling bottles because we all use our water coolers throughout the day. So those are really nice and quick that District 6 really enjoys there. So we fill them up and off we go, rather than the old kind of faucet fills that we used to use. So yeah, a nice little gift.
I'm sorry, Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, I think the water fountains where you fill the bottle up, I don't know what it is, but the quality of water seems so much better. And I don't know, is it a different filtration system? Because every time I use that, no matter where I'm at, that I could tell that's a better quality of water.
I think some of them have a secondary filter in them. So you're probably just getting a little more filtered water, a little more processed down to where it's a little more pure. But I don't know if it's charcoal filter. I'm not really certain the design, but yes, it does have a little better taste to it. It's just water. Yeah. So then continue on with the main yard. So this whole facility, our wish list for next year, as you'll see coming up in some of the budgets. We'll finish the material storage building this year. That's the bottom picture. That's kind of the footprint. So I wanted this in here. Tiffany and I and Cheryl were talking about this just to show the difference in size and kind of things, how things have modernized. Our existing dome is kind of a big balloon. And then the material storage building, you can see the footprint of how big and wide this will be to give us that functionality and multiple trucks filling at the same time, and just a lot of use. So things have changed quite a bit. They've changed in a short order. Our industry has just changed and found better ways to do things. So that leads us to this material storage building. Once that's completed, our plan is to resurface the parking areas as well in our main drives here. When we're done with all this construction and we know we're going to be here for a little while, we're not bringing any more heavy equipment than what we already just haul day to day in here. Complete the whole paving and then get everything restriped. It'll kind of take about any bad parts of pavement that we've had before that are failing, and just it ages over time. So we're conscious of the cost of it, but it's a necessary thing to do. It's obviously not paving on the road, but it's something that's really needed just to eliminate any trip hazards, any failing pavement that we have throughout the facility. We drive so much heavy stuff over top of it. If there's a little weakness, it shows. And it becomes a hole really quickly. And then we have to pothole patch our parking lot. And so not ideal, we make do. We sealed it a few years ago to the best of our ability, but now it's the point it just needs repaved. So that's kind of our plan for next year for the main yard, the entire facility to bring all that pavement up to status. And that'll match right up against where the material storage building concrete pavement will stop this year. For the administration building here, so the building we're all in, we need to, same thing you've seen, kind of the theme that Dennis has going. We've repaired the roof. And then we'll also replace the heating and ventilation unit on this building itself. Trying just to stay ahead of aging. When the wind blows like it did a few weeks ago, or really last week, it'll force water into places that, you just never expected it could get to. So we'll have a contractor come in and make sure all those areas are sealed up and keep the water off of us and off our equipment that's on the second floor, which is a lot of IT specific equipment. And then make sure the heating and cooling system is up to modern standard. And that'll also integrate with our building automation systems that we have, the BAS systems that we talked about recently. So Dennis will be able to see second by second what's going on. And he has nice charts that when it peaked and when the air conditioning caught up and when did the heat turn on. And I mean, just a really cool system that he can work with it that makes us really efficient for that, once again, that really small group we have to maintain this building for 100 of us is they're tasked with quite a bit. So any computer assistance we can have with that will be good.
Adam.
Mhm.
Are the windows state of the art in the admin building? I mean, I
Not at this time.
understand repairing
No,
the
they are
roof
aging. Yeah,
and replacing the HVAC, but if the windows are crummy,
that would probably be next from there, kind of keep the water off and then start working exterior, because we do have some that if the wind blows correctly, it'll force water into the gaskets in between the like little gasket that's there. I think it's rubber and neoprene, and you'll get water that'll run across like the I-beam. So there are methods and things we can do to try to seal it up, but the main thing is try to make sure we can keep it off the top of the building and then get the HVAC, but then we do have to focus on the outside, and then hopefully in the out years into 25, 26, 27, then start looking at like updating carpet, because there's some more modern ways to put carpet down in office buildings, more of the squares and everything, but obviously, got to allocate some budget for that, but yeah, we're conscious of that. And last Wednesday showed that that water, if the wind blows different direction, you get behind that membrane, then it kind of rolls along the I-beams. And so then you have the windows just kind of holding the water for us. So that's next on the list. It'll be after next year though, because we have to make sure we kind of keep the leak off the top. But yeah, the windows, I think, during design and construction, I think were, a point of interest. And so I think that's something in time we're going to have to focus on also, because it will save us money in the long run.
Yeah.
Because we won't be basically breathing off and venting off air. When we get wind that opens up a little membrane and lets the water in the wind in and out, that's also letting whether it be cooling or heat out the other direction. So yeah, so there is more to come for that. Just unfortunately, we just can't afford to do all that kind of at once. So.
understood.
Okay, and then the Southeast Service Center, still going on the wish list here that we're talking about. Finalize any HVAC replacement portion of that project that doesn't get completed this year if we run out of season or the design takes longer. That's why we just wanted everybody to know that it may take us a little bit more than 1 year to kind of finalize that, excuse me. And then also continue the outdoor storage improvements. Really, that's just the same along the lines like concrete bin blocks, but there's a concrete surface there. So it's a little more helpful that we could actually stage different types of material on a hard surface with these bin blocks. So it's a little different than what you see at Chelsea or Manchester, where you're just storing on the ground. We use some material down there where we could even store the stockpile of pothole patching. So the cold mix we refer to, some of our seal coat material, we could maybe do that in their corner of their lot. They have enough concrete by the fuel islands that there's some other storage space there. So that's kind of that continued effort to keep improving storage in that area. Here recently, a few years ago, we put shelving in the cold storage building at that facility. So just improving ways to store a material and kind of basically keep it up off the ground and out of our way. All right, so I believe we have reached a break point here, just a little bit off schedule, but kind of leave that to Cheryl. Yeah, we're getting there. So yeah, I can kind of leave that to.
Go ahead and take a short break. Let's be back here 10 after. Give us 10 minutes. So at 10:10, we will reconvene. So a short recess here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Adam Labe, Director of Operations, again, since we started recording again, we're going to discuss the state of our fleet here at the Road Commission. So first off and foremost, talk about the team. So that nice transition by Tiffany. Yes. we
Very
love the
flashy,
editing.
very
Yes, we
flashy.
love the editing. I'm sure Mike, Andy, and Jeff love it as well. So Mike Livesey, he's our equipment maintenance supervisor. So you'll get to spend a few moments with him. He'll probably be out when we're looking at the equipment here shortly. Andy Coppernall is our group leader. So he's kind of Mike's right-hand man, so to speak. And then Jeff Mann is the stockroom supervisor. So Jeff is phenomenal. Jeff finds us things. He found us things during a pandemic that weren't even available. but we found them, so he is a whiz.
Hmm.
So we like having Jeff, Andy, and Mike with us. They do great things. So we'll get to see them likely here in a little bit. And then we'll jump into the shop team here. So Warren Koppel works directly, he's a stock clerk, he works directly with Jeff Mann. So he's back there at the window, kind of giving us what we need. Whether it be paint, whether a vest, you know, a pair of gloves, whatever it may be. Warren kind of handles that, and then he receives deliveries most days. So he's a busy guy. He kind of runs around, and we got a lot of people getting a lot of parts and bits and pieces. So Warren keeps busy back there. And you have Rob Eklund, he's a mechanic. Wyatt Ford is a mechanic. Justin Hanwald, Justin Hubert, and Bob Yakoveski. Bob is in the south. Now his first name he will not let me pronounce on record, so we just call him Bob. And he appreciates me not trying that. But Bob works at the Southeast Service Center, so he's the one technician that's down there to keep that service center, kind of that portion of the county going. We hope to, you know, exercise some good interviews and be able to get another technician down there as well. But you know, the good mechanics are few and far between sometimes, and so it's a bit of a challenge to recruit that. So there is an opening down there, but we keep good eye on Bob, and the employees down there try to help Bob as much as they can. So kind of keep that functioning. And Mike, he'll report down there and kind of visit with Bob if Bob's doing something a little safety sensitive, but we keep a good eye out for Bob. He does a lot by himself down at the Southeast Service Center. So he's kind of a one-man show at some days. The rest of the gentlemen here are at the main yard. And that's the only place that we have house mechanics at this point. Okay, so some of the shop responsibilities, very much routine maintenance, roadside repairs. They have engine overhauls when we have older equipment that's beyond warranty. Thankfully, not much, but we are capable. And obviously capable of manufacturing and, building up things there. That's kind of working on one of our brine trucks right there that you see Rob welding there. Hydraulic, electrical, brine system repair, really anything we need that we can afford. We can afford to do in-house, that we have the materials and the know-how to do, which is most of the equipment we have, we can maintain here. So that team is very, very important to us year round. They'll respond to emergencies. Emergency for the shop is a little bit different than emergency to operations staff in general. An emergency to the shop is our equipment's broken out on a job, which then, you know, adds a whole nother twist that now we're working on the road. And so it's an emergency in that sense because we had to focus on safety, because now we're outside of a building and trying to repair a piece of equipment. So it's challenging. Usually they try to come in, get the machine at least in good enough status, or have it towed back so we can work on it in a building. But inevitably, sometimes we have to work, especially in the winter, to get the vehicle back to the yard.
So wait a minute, we're doing repairs on the side of the road?
Only if we have to do it to make the machine move. If it's a hydraulic line or something that limits it from moving, or a tire repair where we can't physically tow it or physically move it. Because if our hydraulic systems fail, or the lines fail and sever and leak, whatever you're doing is kind of basically set down and stays where it's at. So a lot of our equipment, since it's doing some type of grading, it'll be basically, or plowing, it's kind of stuck on the ground. So we couldn't really tow it in. So we usually take a line out, repair it while we're there. The driver stays with them. Usually the foreman comes out. You know, we kind of either just close the road for a minute, or just like shift traffic over as best we can. Thankfully, most of our stuff breaks out on, you know, 2-lane roads. It's a little easier to kind of maintain, but usually just plumb the line back in, get some fluid back in it, and then get it back to the building.
Okay.
And then if there's something comes about that we can't do anything in the field, or the mechanic isn't comfortable, then we'll do whatever we have to do to tow it back. We have quite a few towing companies that work really good with us, so they'll bring us back in to get us on flat ground to work on.
Okay.
And then the shop also outfits some of the specialty vehicles. So they may put strobe lights on some things, or put the radios and the stickers when we get equipment. They'll kind of do that upfitting. They also then maintain the supplies for the organization. That's more the stock room. So that's Warren and Jeff's portion. And as you can see their picture that Tiffany has there, we have quite a bit of things that we kind of put in the cage, so to speak, there. And then manage the contracts with the vendors. So fueling, actually getting us our fuel here, oils, lubricants of any type. So we keep pretty busy in the shop. Unfortunately, with hundreds of pieces of equipment, something breaks every day. Even if we're having a good day, things do break. So the fleet overview itself. So as you know, at the road commission here, we have heavy trucks, which are dump trucks, so to speak. We have road graders, we have backhoes, aerial lift trucks, and then our light fleet and the medium duty fleet that we refer to, those are basically pickup trucks of some. They vary a little bit in size and shape depending on what we need them for. Then we have some specialty equipment, which we have one of the devices actually here. The chip spreader unit, so that yellow unit in the photo is actually out there, so we can look at that today. Then our rollers, so basically anything CO code equipment wise, we have spreaders, which is that there. We also have tar distributors, which spray the liquid tar down, so the sealer. And then we have some brooms that go along with that operation. So they're all getting cleaned up, and actually some are already in storage for the year. As you know, we were pretty busy here for the last couple of months chasing that. So when they get them done, they clean them up and then we get them off to storage so they don't get any weathering just sitting outside. And then our vacuum truck, which is very, very important to us, used for cleaning structures, hydro excavation around utilities. It's an amazing device that we got a few years ago. It's one of the coolest toys we have. It does really good things for us. We use it a lot. We love it, and it's brand new, so that's going to help us for a long time coming. And then more importantly, the poly tanker. What that is a polyurethane, so basically plastic tank semi trailer that we use for dust control. So the industry has kind of transitioned that way. They're a little lighter weight, a little easier to maintain. If something ever happens to the tank, you can take one of the two tanks off and just put a new one on it. Whereas some of our old steel tankers, if something happened or the inside like dual wall was severed, something happened, we had leaks or the baffles weren't working properly, you basically would have to either just take it offline or get rid of it. With a poly tanker, you have some interchangeable parts. So that's why it's important. We want to continue purchasing those, and that will also improve our dust control, which we've obviously discussed all the way back in last December of 2022 about the importance of the local road program, managing dust control in-house, the improvements that we want to make and increase our level of service. The poly tanker really helps us with that because we want to have multiple semis to pull that. So really we can move more material each day. So then we can scrape more miles for dust control. And then just to focus on the expenditure trends here a little bit, we've shrunk it down. Some of you have seen this presentation before. We had quite a few years. We've kind of pulled it to 10 years, 8 to 10 year windows that we want to look at. Really just to highlight kind of the gratefulness and thank you for the board being supportive of this. You see how in 2014 and 15, it started making its way up. And then in 17 is when the push came, and we've been pushing upwards of $3 million for the last almost 10 years, 8 years. That's incredible. And that really helps us. 2022 was not a fluke. That was delay, as we made the note down there from some of the carryover. So we still got equipment. We just didn't physically get the trucks that we wanted. So that dropped that number a little bit, but that investment is phenomenal. Our equipment, you'll be able to see out there because we have old equipment to compare to the new equipment. So you can really contrast the difference between where we've been and where we're kind of heading and where we need to be for the level of service that we offer. So really, this is more of a thank you slide than anything. This was started before me and we've all just kept moving it forward. So it's very much appreciated by the staff, by myself, because we're not begging for machinery. We really do appreciate that.
And 2017 is when the gas tax changes took place that Lansing passed in 2015. That is when we started to see that. And as this board has been doing for quite some time, we really are trying to balance the resources that we have available to us. Obviously, taking care of the roads is the main focus, but we have to have the staff, the equipment, the materials necessary to do that. So what you see in 2017 was the beginning of that, being able to honestly have the resources available to have a concerted effort to invest in our equipment.
Yeah, that continued allocation is really important to us. Yeah.
Commissioner Green?
Thank you. And so in 2024, is that an anticipated?
Yeah, so I'll kind of cover some of the
Fine.
fleet. Yeah, I'll cover some of the fleet and then that'll be kind of wish list as we talked about with facilities just a few moments ago. So that's where we intend to go with our 2024 proposals.
Commissioner Smers?
Just for clarity, so the 2022 was down because you didn't get the equipment yet. It's ordered, it's allocated, but
So
is that the reason 2023 is so high?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why you'll see 2023's, you know,
A
2
jump.
million
Yeah.
more basically. So we had to move 3.19 came with us from 2022 into 2023. Yep. So yeah, unfortunately with that little discrepancy there, it moves the chart, but it would be like at a trend.
Yeah,
And so we've kind of matched that. So yeah, 22 is just that kind of number that unfortunately just sits lower, but
I thought so. I just want to be.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was actually the intention. And then we'll talk about some of the changes we made because price increase over the course of the
Mhm.
time, the last 2 years as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So heavy trucks, so this is where we can kind of touch some of that. So heavy trucks, obviously we use in winter maintenance. This is southbound Z Road, so just south of here, right before you get on to I-94 West. You see how much snow those trucks can move, a lot better than what it used to be. So we really appreciate that. And once again, like I say, newer, it does improve some efficiency as we go. So that truck at that time was applying salt and brine because you see the snow was kind of wet at that point. So we were in theory catching up to the event. And then in the summertime, hauling material and maintaining gravel roads. These trucks still have the underbodies on them in the summertime. They can't cut the road like a grader, but they can spread material where we have a section that may have holes or something. They can assist behind a grader. But the main thing is they move the material, whether it be ditching, you know, so excavation spoils, or actually taking material out to put back somewhere, whether it be spread on the road or put back in for a culvert excavation or replacement project like that you see here. Well, actually, you'll see for us from heavy equipment here in about another month, we should be done, but we're going to work on old US 12. So we'll be moving a lot of material and we'll do that with our own team to backfill that hole once we dig it out. And so now our fleet here, we have 54 trucks, so we're still doing pretty good, but obviously we've had that 2-year gap. So you're going to see the average age jumped up and then the average odometer, so the average mileage jumped as well. Those are increases we knew were coming. We understood with not being able to bring an influx of new trucks in here in 2 years, essentially, we haven't bought anything. So that's why our numbers have went up. Some of the fleet has failed. You know, I think we've had 2 units we've had to take off the road. Thankfully, they were old enough, they were considered spare. There's only one of them that really we like to have a route, but they were still kind of a spare truck. So we're still breathing, but we have to start getting equipment in. And it's no one's fault. It's the delays that we've seen. So we're creative. We're going to make it work. We'll get to the finish line with it. But nope, go ahead. I think Joanne was.
I
sorry.
feel like my eyes are going. Commissioner Green,
Yeah.
Commissioner Smers, you guys decide who goes first.
And then me.
Oh, and then you two. All right, 1, 2, 3. Take it away,
So the
Rod.
average age of each truck is 10.29 years.
Yeah, so that's just an average age. So basically when it hits 120 months, so 10 years, we basically have that rolling ticker that we track on spreadsheets essentially.
I thought their lifespan was only 10 years.
Well, that's our goal. So we'll cover that here in just a second. That's our goal.
We
Our
would like
goal
to be
is
replacing
Yeah.
trucks every 10 years.
Yeah, so that's our objective. That's where we want to be. Perfect scenario is where we want to be. Unfortunately, it just doesn't find its way there because it's a considerable amount of money if you were just to replace everything. And you can't replace everything at once because then you would in theory have everything kind of over at the same time. So we kind of balance that and we manipulate it because we're able to send these older trucks to be a spare truck or kind of an extra route. If we have enough people, we can use it type of truck. And then the main routes, the main employees that are here every day assigned to a unit, having as new as they can piece of the fleet, which at that point, you know, we're doing pretty good there.
Plus,
So
we
we
haven't
balance
received
that.
trucks since 2021.
Yeah, so 2021 was the last time we got a new truck here. We bought 4 trucks that year and we were initially set out with that 11 truck kind of shot in the arm. I've referred to it before to try to purchase. And that's the one that we had to reduce to 8, which I'll cover here on the, I think. But yeah, so goal is 10 years or 100,000 miles. So average odometer, we're managing that. We're managing that part of our goal. But the average age, it's creeping up and some just because they don't get used as often. So we'll keep them longer if they're in good shape.
Okay.
Commissioner McCollum.
I was looking at the average odometer and in 10.29 years, roughly the miles per year, is that roughly 8,000 per truck?
Yeah, in theory, by the numbers it is. Usually you're gonna gain that mileage in the wintertime where we're just in theory running in circles. Because we have our routes. The summertime, you'll still add mileage, but it's more project based. So it depends kind of where we're going. You know, it's not as average, you know, during the wintertime, 300 miles a day, 200 miles a day. It's very consistent because we're in theory doing the same lap for the most part, you know, every day that we're on snow and ice. So you can kind of calculate that a little more consistently, but yeah, basically 8,300 miles a year.
Okay.
So they're moving pretty
So
far
with
distances
trucks,
in one county.
usually people say, oh, you're just breaking it in at 100,000. But with our trucks, where's the wear and tear?
Well, so our goals, so some of the next slides we'll kind of touch on, like our goal is to be around 80,000 miles because our trucks, you know, yeah, if it was just going straight down the highway,
Mhm.
you could go hundreds of thousands of miles.
Right.
The start, the stop, the heavy load all the time, the vibration, you know, there's just a combination that just literally we're going to show one of the trucks where like the frame is actually severing. And it's 18, 20 years old. So it's an old truck. But just the vibration, because those scrapers, you know, that vibration from the road goes right back through the frame. And so there's only so much mechanically, you know, that it can take.
These are rough miles.
Yes.
Yeah. The
Yes.
physical strain on the unit the whole time is just wanting to pull the welds apart and break the bolts and just loosen things up. I mean, we frequently have to tighten frame pieces and no one's doing anything incorrectly.
Right.
It's just that sheer vibration. And then, you know, with the wing plows, now you add more tension,
Yeah.
trying to pull the vehicle back the whole time. And so just the transmission, the tires, just every single part is under some kind of strain, including the driver. That's a lot, you know, because you're even like you're pushing with your eyeballs sometimes because
Yeah.
you're trying to move so much weight. So yeah, our equipment that's why like the 10 years,
Yeah.
80,000, 100,000 miles, like you start getting further than that, you really see failures.
It's a different kind of wear and tear.
It very much is. And it's a physical failure.
Yeah.
And you'll see that with the graders as well, because we try to keep those young as we can as well, because they're always under load. The only time they're not under load is when they leave the building and drive to the road they're going to scrape. The rest of their lifetime here at this road commission is scraping something, fighting them. They don't get many days where they get to just spread nice loose material. Yeah, so it's a necessary evil and it's unfortunate, but we have a good plan and we've stayed on track really for the better part, even really more than 10 years. So we're doing really good with that and we're just kind of keeping that wheel going, wheel spinning, so to speak. But
Commissioner Smers and then Commissioner Green has, no.
I was just young.
Sorry, my peripheral vision only logs so much
even Bart
information.
is
Commissioner Smers.
So of the 54 trucks, is that, how much of that is light?
we actually have a whole nother light fleet.
Okay.
This is just the heavy
That's heavy
trucks.
fleet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll cover that and we'll cover it a little quicker on the next one. These are just such an integral part that we talk quite a bit about the trucks. But yeah, so there's a whole nother
Okay.
fleet, light fleet. And so this is a picture of the main storage building here. We alluded to that back at the beginning, the onset of the facilities discussion. You can see how many pieces of equipment are there. And we took this picture from one of our platform aerial signal trucks 2 winters ago. And you can just see how much we have in there the day before snow when we know it's coming. So you can imagine now in the middle of the night getting lake effect snow, and we're here at 3 a.m. and trying to make all this be prepared. This was nice and neat on Friday afternoon. We knew it was going to snow 12 inches the next day and we were all planned. So it all goes back in line why it was so important, because the DEF, that storage tote that we were talking about, in the very middle of the picture, you can see at the back end of a grader, it used to be all the way down there and we'd have to wheel this to every truck. And so the improvements we've made with just such a small little device will make it so much easier for all those people trying to go through all that. 3 districts going out there. So it gets really busy in there. So this is a great picture. This is probably one of the coolest pictures we have, in my opinion, because it shows, one, I like nice fancy blue salt. It hasn't been
Yes.
snowed on yet, but it just how much we put in such a small space and how good our drivers are at parking them and staging them and how good the foremen are at like making sure everybody's not crashing into each other in there. So we do bend some bumpers occasionally, but all in all, we make it through.
You're such a nerd.
I know. We like it, but it happens. There's reality in it. Sometimes we scratch things. But,
Great.
so here's basically the replacement schedule we've talked about. So goal right now is 10 years, 80,000 miles, or excuse me, 100,000 miles. We'd like to be at 80,000 as like our baseline goal. but we know it's going to take some time to get there. So this continued investing, we'll get there. Continued allocation, it'll come. You can't do it all at once because you get all old at one time. So we just keep taking bites of the elephant as we go. So right now we have 18 trucks overdue for replacement. We intend to check that list off because 8 trucks will show up eventually. That's the goal, to have them come in there. I know it's kind of a laughing matter, but it's the reality of it that we had to make some adjustments. So that'll take off a big chunk of that list. And then every year we want to start purchasing 5 trucks a year because 50 trucks, 10 years. Cheryl said, keep it simple math. I like simple math. We were joking this morning, Jeff and I talking about like Excel does my calculating for me. But just keep it nice and simple because it's a uniform process that no matter who stands or sits in any of these chairs can keep that going for the agency. And it's nothing complicated. It's nothing, there's no science. It's just simple. We need to keep some kind of process going for ourselves. No, go ahead. No, it's just sustainability.
Commissioner McCollum and then Commissioner Green.
So ever since I've been here, I've been looking at this 8 new trucks reserved, waiting for these 8 new trucks. So when we get them, what year are they gonna be?
They'll be 2023s.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yeah, so no, they won't be 2021s.
I was gonna say that wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, correct. And that's, we've alluded to that as well. So initially onset was recoil from COVID, pandemic delays, and then change in the way the industry and way certain manufacturers did kind of fleet purchasing because they make more money off people that go straight down the road.
Yeah.
Whereas those of us that are just buying to kind of beat DPWs, Department of Public Works, like working agency work, we get the cheapest version no matter what. That's what they're required to by contract for contract purchasing. So we started, not just us, just all agencies, you start to find your way a little further down the totem pole. And so we end up delay. So we had the 2 years of delay. And then this year, we know that there's cost increase over the last couple of years. So we made that adjustment from 11 trucks to 8 trucks. And then we also called the manufacturer and said, okay, we're reducing 3 trucks on this purchase. And that's when they started guaranteeing, like, you will have them this winter. You will get the cabin chassis. So we still have to build them. So we get the cabin chassis. So basically a rolling cabin chassis. And then we have another company, Truck and Trailer Specialties in Howell, that'll actually build all this stuff on there because we just don't have the time and the resources to do it ourselves. We're capable, but we don't have the space to do that, nor the time. They have a team of people that can mount these things up and make them consistent. So that's where we sit with that right now. And then we keep moving on down the road with our normal purchasing, but we consider normal. But
So since it's going to be the latest year, are there going to be some upgrades to it?
really
That's
just,
the extra that we're paying for?
no, they've just increased. So it's unfortunate how this works out for us. For purchasing for agencies, we don't, because accounting standard and practice, we don't pay until we receive. So these manufacturers have done it, all manufacturers, not just one company, but they continually inflate the price to match their inflation or whatever rate they need to be at. And in turn, when we're delayed like this, we end up paying more because that's just what the price is now. And so
And I'm
that's
going to explain, this isn't like buying a personal vehicle.
yeah. So that's actually, we talked about that explanation. So when you buy, so if you order so we'll use General Motors. So if you order a GMC Sierra 1500, like we use for our superintendents and fleet vehicles for inspection. If we order one of those today, we would know how much we're paying, maybe even get a VIN number in a couple weeks. But that doesn't work for fleet purchasing. We just say we want it. So in theory, we reserve it. And so then we work with the board to allocate the funding. So the funding's there. So basically we have a bank account waiting. When it finally shows up, then we're able to send payment. So you saw that recently here. We just did that with the 2 Tahoes that we got. They're actually Chevy Tahoes. We found special services vehicles, which are designed for law enforcement, first responders. So a little more trimmed down, made for strobe lights, like prepared for that. We found 2 of them on a lot that was they were ready. One was black, one was white in color. So we were able to get those right as soon as we had you guys approve. So the board approved, Cheryl signed, we were able to go. Whereas opposed to now we'll get approval and we have to wait 10, 20 months for some of these things. So it is unfortunate, but that's the reality that we just don't have any other opportunity to really push that any more than we're not gonna buy from you anymore.
Yeah, and it subjects us to these price increases, because that's what I keep,
Yeah.
I kept saying to Adam, I don't understand. I mean, I can go in and order my F-150 and I know exactly
Right.
how much that's gonna
Right,
cost. I still
right.
might wait 10 months to get my F-150,
Right.
but I at least know how much it
a
costs.
set
And he
dollar.
keeps coming back and saying, these trucks cost more, they cost more, they cost more. I'm like,
Yeah,
whole structure, business structure is different.
yeah, it makes you feel like you're not paying attention, or you don't know what you're doing sometimes, because it's like, you just told me this price and now 6 months later, it's gonna be this price. And so it's very much balances with what the economy is doing with steel tariffs. I mean, there's all kinds of things that affect this from different angles, and so the price just incrementally moves. So with our plan to try to stay ahead of this, we intend to seek approval basically at the end of the month, and then have budget allocation with the understanding that we know we're not going to get these units until 2024, to be prepared to basically start the reservation process and reach out to the vendors, test the things we need to test and demonstrate, and then move forward. Because at least then we can recognize it in that same fiscal year. So Dan and finance and his team doesn't have to continually have these carryover funds, because it really, it messes up the charts, because, you know, we didn't spend, but in theory, we still have to spend, and we're trying to carry money around, and it just makes it challenging. So that's our plan, to kind of stay ahead of it. Things seem to be leveling a little bit. At least now the manufacturers are being truthful and giving us true, like, okay, it's 400 days for a poly tanker. So at the last meeting here in August, we'd like to seek approval for a poly tanker for this year. It's 400 days away. So we'll just get it in at the end of next year. So just planning ahead. But that in turn saves us some money, because then our wish list for 2024 is when we'll order the semi. So the tractor that'll pull that trailer, as opposed to trying to buy it all at once for $500,000. It's easier for us to plan ahead, get the poly tanker ordered, because it takes longer. Then next year allocate funding to get the semi truck to actually pull it. So we're making lemonade out of our lemon, but we'll get it there. So anyway, so I'll kind of keep going quickly here and kind of move into some other.
Commissioner
interesting
Green
stuff.
had a
Oh, I'm
question,
sorry.
Adam.
I'm
So when
sorry.
the truck is retired, is there any salvage value?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So our goal is to auction them off. And so we see some type of fund, you know, basically received back from that. So we usually turn that into buying another light fleet truck, or buying a piece of heavy equipment, a smaller piece of heavy equipment. I shouldn't confuse you, not the big expensive graders, but something small like a backhoe or a skid steer, small little, you know, piece of equipment we use to kind of move material around. So yeah, we receive funds back and we auction these off. So we just don't know how much. So that's why our goal, to keep them a little younger, we can get a little more auction proceeds. So then we turn those proceeds right back into our equipment budget every year.
What's the average we receive back? Any idea?
We can go somewhere like $30,000 you can get. Sometimes if the truck is very, very old or has failed, or we've taken parts off of it, you can only get a few $1,000s for just the recycling cost. So we really take anything we can get. The newer trucks will get $30,000, $50,000, because the bids can go up, because they get put on gov deals. So they auction them off. So people keep bidding, and we hope to always see them raise them up. So that's why we clean them up and get them nice and orange, so they're ready to go. So they draw some attention. And we do that with all of our equipment. Every single thing we sell, or we basically take out of service, we try to sell and generate some type of proceed, because then we turn it right back into our equipment budget to manage all the offsets. So some of these price increases, we can balance it that way.
Anything else?
Thank you.
No? Okay.
And so as you can see on the slide, the replacement cost is continually going up. So we're approximately $380,000. If you were to replace everything, you're talking $6.8 million right now. Obviously not, you know, financially responsible, and we don't want 18 brand new trucks at one time. We like the theme of 5 at a time, because then we can have that systematic approach. And that theory and theme is used kind of all the way through the list of all our equipment. So there we touched a little bit on our target miles. Our goal would be 80,000 average miles. We're almost there. We're going to get there in the next few years. Some of these older trucks that are still hanging on right now, because we've had this delay over 2 years, will go. and they have such a high mileage pull and years of service pull that our numbers will come down quickly. So, you know, we're 3,150 miles, I think, off from our goal right now. We'll get there. Probably 2 years, we'll probably be there. And then the grader, so the very expensive heavy equipment that we have that is incredibly critical for our success. The graders are used for scraping the unpaved roads. So this is the basically thing that goes out, the piece of equipment that goes out in front of the dust control, shapes the road up, and then we apply the dust suppression, so the liquid brine down. What you see right here in the photo is actually limestone spreading. So that's a limestone haul, a local road project we talk about so frequently here with the local road program as a whole. That's what this grader is. That's where they're spreading that stone out. This is basically putting that new lift of limestone on a road. Before we roll it in, we apply the liquid brine on it and then essentially turn it back to traffic. And then now we have at least a surface to start scraping and do a routine maintenance with. And plowing snow on unpaved roads, which we've all discussed. You see the front of that unit there by the headlights. There's a little slide thing there. That's called the plow mount. And we'll see one out here in a little bit. What that does is can hook into a large plow. So you see some of the pictures that we have, I think on the Facebook pages and then some of our other flyers where there's these big massive plows on the front of the grader. That's what those plow horns, those plow lifts are for. That makes this unit, because it's all-wheel drive, it makes it nearly a tank to kind of blow through some of the drifting areas, especially on our rural routes. You know, Barbara, you're nodding because
Your next slide.
Oh, my next slide has, oh, perfect. I knew it was in there somewhere. So we'll jump, there we go. So this is actually, I believe this is Bethel Church, where we took that picture. That's probably 6 foot tall drift there at least. You know, and we're moving down the road at about 15, 20 mile an hour. So you're getting a lot of work done in short order, but without that, our trucks don't go through that so well, even with their front plows. There's only a few V plows on the front of these dump trucks that can push it. Just, you need something very big and strong like a grader. So thankfully to have 11 of those and 11 plows to push around. So those are great for us. So our fleet, there's 11 in the grader fleet. Average age of 6.3 years. The chronometer is 6,000 hours. So we're in our 10-year window. We're in our 10,000 hour window. We only have one unit that we'll talk about here on the next slide. We have one unit that has failed. It's still worth money, it still runs, still is functional, but it has exceeded its life expectancy. It's starting to cost us to use it. So that's one of the graders we'll look at that we want to auction off this fall, and then come back here at the end of August. And with the leftover residual from the 2 graders we did order this year that were approved, order that 3rd unit, hoping that it shows end of 2023 or beginning of 2024. And then use our buyback, which is something I'll explain really quickly. With Caterpillar equipment, we're offered a buyback. So when we purchase a piece of equipment with them, they give us a few year window. So 5 years at 5,000 hours, 6 years at 10,000 hours, something like that, or even 10 years at 10,000 hours. There's some difference in depending on what type of equipment you buy, where they will give us a guaranteed price, no matter shape, form, whatever, as long as it's running, they'll give us that price for that unit. So we don't even have to worry about the auction. So we're able to sell it back, so to speak, to them. They'll take it back and then pay us that money. So what we can do with those proceeds from that buyback and partnered with the residual from the funding we already had this year for 3 graders, we'll be able to afford that 3rd one, especially with this one that is failing us, that has to be auctioned off. It's a John Deere manufacturer, so we have to sell that one. We'll sell that, use those proceeds, tie all that stuff together, use the buyback proceeds, and we'll be able to afford what we're going to recommend in August that we purchase. Because at this point, our fleet of 11 is maintained by one rental grader, which is expensive. That is a monthly cost. So we want to get that 11th grader back into the fleet as quick as we can to save us the expenditure every month to rent that grader. So that's what this slide basically says, but we had 3 graders that we had allocated funding for at the beginning of the year. Costs increase were recognized, and that limited us to only be able to purchase 2. Now that we know we're far enough in the year, we know they're going to show up this year, we have residual, and then we'll have proceeds from the buyback and the auction. We'll be able to afford that 3rd. So that's kind of where we're at with getting our 3 graders that are currently overdue. Next year, we'll start working through graders that still have a buyback, because in every grader we have, we'll have this buyback program of some type. So we'll be able to 1 or 2 graders a year, once again, continue that on like we've done for the last 10 years. Get 1 or 2 graders a year, and then you keep the fleet young, because you see we're already at our goals, we're doing great. So we just have to keep sustaining that. And you see our target hours will be there as soon as this John Deere is sold. We'll be at our target hours. And then years succession, and we maybe get down to 4,000 hours. It's a possibility. Still, the goal is to hit 5,000 for right now. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but we may be able to consider lowering our target in time. But we are well under the lifespan and the life expectancy of these graders. So we're doing a great thing. And these graders are very much critical. They may be the most important thing we have. It'd be nice if we had 40 of them. And then here's a little specialty device, our backhoes. So those are great. They're multi-use. They piece of equipment. They can load material, so they can take place of loaders if need be, to get us by in a pinch. And then also you see the boom on the back, which is basically a hoe device that's used for excavation. So that can be used for small drainage, culvert repairs, catch basin repairs. So in a more specific area where we don't have a lot of room for a big grade all or a big excavator, we can kind of meander these back and do the excavation that we get completed prior to replacing whatever drainage structure we're working on. The top one there, guardrail replacement, is very important to us because the state trunk line crew has to replace miles and miles and miles of guardrail every year. But what that's really important to this agency is when we purchase a new backhoe this year, we'll be able to get it depreciated on the state trunk line crew, because we'll assign it there similar to how we do with the heavy trucks. So there's depreciation involved in that. So someone else can help us pay for this unit. And then we'll keep the older unit here on our payroll, so to speak, and work on our heavy equipment crew and our District 2 crew. So we have a little bit of leverage with that, where we can get something depreciated and nearly paid for, and then use it on our own workforce as well. So we would like to have 2 of them. We're going to purchase 1 this fall, and then see what some of the buyback, because these also have buyback as well, what we can recognize proceeds from that, and may be able to order a second one as well. So that's all, hopeful, but we're going to get there. We're getting 1 for sure. And then we'll see what kind of proceeds we can get from the buyback. And then kind of make a process and educated decision, probably sometime in September, October. And then our fleet, we only have 2. So our average age, we're creeping up there. We're 8.9 years because they both were bought new at the same time. So this is probably our best example of kind of talking about how important it is to try to stagger things. This was no one's fault. We were able to afford this at the time, so we purchased them, but we've used them, and now we have to balance that. How can we make this work with 2 aging units? So our chronometer hours were good. Our average age is where it pushes us to need to purchase at least 1, because we need to exercise some of that buyback. There's a 10-year limit on that for this piece of equipment. So we need to give Mike Livesey the freedom to make those good decisions, what will give us the most return for which piece of equipment we sell back, and then move forward with the process to kind of offset that a little bit, because we really would not like to have 2 at once if we can balance that out a little bit.
Does the chronometer give us the actual average use?
Yeah, so the chronometer is for heavy equipment based fleet and for aerial fleet. So things that Brent's team would use for working on signals, or the sign department would use for working on traffic signs, or excuse me, for road signs. The reason for that is that's hours actually in service. So when the power is on, the ignition is on, it's moving, it's operating. That's why heavy equipment or equipment in general is balanced out in hours, because it's hours of work, as opposed to miles that wouldn't really help you with some of this equipment, because a backhoe may only drive 300 miles in 20 years, but it could have 14,000 hours on it. So that's how you balance that out that way. And also some of it has like lifespan and life expectancy for aerial platforms. there's only so many rotations these things are designed for, ups and downs and ins and outs, you know, basically functions that are tested for. So they have replacement cycles for good reason. And then our replacement schedule for the backhoes, like I say, the 10 years, 10,000 hours, we're okay on the hours. Where we're at is years of service. 2 of these units, because they were bought together, are due for replacement. We're, like I say, we're trying to offset that a little bit. Use some of the proceeds to be able to pay for one of the 2 that we need to replace as well, but really get a little bit of chronological time in the middle. So one can be older than the other. So we don't have to replace all at once.
Commissioner Green, do you have a question?
No idea.
Oh, I have, Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, Adam, the time, is it going to be like a few months or a year in between?
It's all going to depend on what kind of buyback that we can exercise, or excuse me, get in return for one of the 2 units. What we were talking yesterday, we're trying to balance that out. One has less hours, but it's been used harder, has more vibration. It had to do heavy excavation more. It's used a compactor device on the back, so it's vibrated more. So it may be beneficial for us to actually sell that one back as opposed to the one with more hours. So we're trying to balance that out and see what repairs would be to basically just service both of them. And we're just going to weigh that out, but that gives Mike the freedom to disseminate with the crew and the foreman between those 2 pieces of you know, which 2 or which one of the 2 we should sell back. But yes, the goal would be to span that out as far as we can, but stay maybe within this budget year, just to give us that little bit of window. So it's not just 10 years from now hitting again and again. So just trying to balance it out a little bit, because, you know, 240,000 for 2 of them is a lot more than just $120,000 to just replace one of them. So a little bit smaller bite of the apple. And then, so we touched a little bit about chronometers and aerial lift trucks here. We'll kind of go through that a little quick because we're actually in a really good place with those. We have another new one coming next year. So we're doing pretty good with those. Primary uses are to get us up off the ground. So signs and signals, that's the very important part for our traffic and safety department. And then also tree trimming. So forestry work in general is what we use, operations department. So we have a truck that's only 1.5 years, 2 years old, I think at this point. So we're pretty good. Our secondary truck is aging, but it gets us by right now. So we're doing good in this area.
What's the,
Commissioner Green?
what is the typical cost for an aerial lift?
I think they're 275, I'm sorry. Let me go to the next slide here real quick. So they're $275,000 right now.
I didn't see that.
No, you're okay. That's all right. It was a few slides in. So where we're at, I'll flip back one page here, one slide. So we have 6 trucks in our fleet. Our average age is 7.3 years, but our chronometer is just under 5,000 hours. So we're okay. We're in a good place. Probably in 1.5 years, 2 years, we'll have to start considering replacing some of the signs and signals trucks. But once again, 1 at a time, not 2 or 3 at a time, and just keep getting every 4 or 5 years to replace one. So it's a little more manageable. Because costs with this type of unit specifically have increased considerably. We know that, we've at least exercised that and understand it because we ordered one here recently. That will show up next year, and lead times are 2 years basically. So we're able to get that and get a little experience with ordering this type of unit in the new system, the way things are these days. So we'll be, like I say, 1.5 years, you know, 2 years out ordering for something that we'd hope to see in 26, 25, somewhere in there. And then we'll get into the light fleet that Jeff had talked about earlier here. So we consider medium trucks, light duty trucks, all kind of our light fleet. So that's road crews, waymasters, inspectors, our superintendents, myself. We kind of lump light fleet all into one, but we have a multitude, probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 different types of light fleet. But we focus mainly on the pickups themselves because pickups are an easily averaged cost. And we know the pickups in the 1-tons will cost the most. So we can estimate what we need and the allocation for funding that we need just in that. So that's why we kind of refer to pickups as just light fleet in general. So we have nearly 60 trucks. Our average age is doing pretty good, 6.6 years. And our average odometer, we've actually dropped that down. We've been successful. We got 5 new 1500 Sierras this year. We just are prepping 2 new Tahoes that came in. We've had a GMC Terrain that came in, so smaller SUVs that we can use. So we're really taking bigger bites of the apple than we thought we would this year. We still have great funding allocated for that, so we intend to order some more next year and just keep bringing that average odometer down. What you'll see in the next few years is that number should drop a little bit because we're getting to a point where their average age is starting to match the mileage. Whereas before our age was, 10, 15 years, but it had 100 and some thousand miles on it. Whereas now a lot of our fleet, as you see, is below that. So that's a manageable, we're hitting our goal right now, which is really good. So we'll keep bringing it down as best we can and get us to a point where we're in good status. So people that are assigned a vehicle every day have as new as we can get them and as efficient as we can get them, effective as we can get them, type of what they need equipment. So we've changed some of our process with that. We're buying specifically what we need and building it into a uniform platform, whether it be a 1500 Sierra, is it crew cab or extended cab, specific things, specific platforms, and then we build what we need on it. And that way, then someone gets something, they're going to have to drive it for 10 years, maybe 12 years, 15 years, whatever it may be. They need to have what works for them right from the start. Because if they don't average a lot of mileage, if they don't go very far, that truck or that vehicle could be with them for a while. So we need to make sure they have what they need from the start. Rather than trying to make them, like their position, fit the vehicle, we'll make the vehicle fit their position. So that's why you see these numbers changing a little bit, and it's good progress. Same goal, 10 years, 100,000 miles. If you look at our numbers and our current, spreadsheet, will say there's 23 trucks we need to replace. We need to do that in incremental bites. We can't, 1, afford, or 2, buy everything at once. That doesn't set us up for anything other than just this conversation 10 years from now. So we need to make that tweak and that adjustment a little bit, try to bite a little bit off as we can. Average cost about $45,000 right now. It could increase, likely won't decrease over the next few years. Unfortunately, the elephant in the room, but we can get it. We're averaging, we're being conservative, the cost. So we know that we could get some vehicles under that, but most vehicles are coming in at $45,000 by the time they're all built and sent out on the road, because there's some other cost when you buy something. You may purchase it for $30,000, but you may spend $5,000, $6,000 getting what we need to fit the position that it has to fulfill. And then some of our specialty equipment, which unfortunately I won't get to see the vacuum truck today, so I'll have to look at it in the picture because I think it's out doing something today. The vacuum truck was new a few years ago. It's amazing. It has a lot of roles. Hydro excavation is very important to us with some of the issues we've seen with utility location or missed lines that basically no one has plans for, so they don't know they're there until we start digging. So these hydro excavation units really help us for that, because then we're not tearing things with our equipment and running risk of, actually hitting or striking the line that could hurt somebody of some type, whether it be gas, electric, anything. I mean, because any line strike stops the job, because we don't know if it's live or dead. We don't know if it's even, is it just cable? We're not trained in that. So it's very much a safety sensitive time when it happens. So we don't like that. So we like to know what we're getting into, so to speak. So that's why this piece of equipment is phenomenal. And then we talked a little bit about the semis, so the tractors, as we refer to them to, used to haul equipment and material. That also will pull that poly tanker we're talking about. That's so critically important for dust control. And then obviously loaders, those are used to tree calls. So those are used to respond to emergencies, but mainly load us. The term is in their title. Load us for snow and ice, load us for whether it be backfill material, whether it's aggregate, whatever it may be. That's the device or the unit that gets the stuff in our trucks. That's the only way that we can load our trucks. The backhoes help us, but they're for in a pinch. They're not that tall. They don't have big buckets. They're designed for something else. So these loaders are designed just specifically to move stuff and put it in the back of our trucks. And then we get into the great alls, which I think the shop had one over there they were going to work on. So it's actually in the line. We can see that here in a few minutes. And then our boom mowers that are used for the brush cutting and brush mowing throughout the county. Once again, another thing like the graders, we'd love to have 40 of those, but that's not reality. So we work with the 6 that we have. That fleet is okay right now. It'll age as we go, but as this fleet ages, we want to start purchasing and demoing, then purchasing units that are a little more prepped for just mowing. A little easier on the operator to see where they're going and what they're doing, less fatigue, and it just fits the bill a little bit better for what we're trying to do. So you'll see a little change in the boom mowers over the next 4 or 5 years. A little bit added cost, but right now we're good. Most of them are new. You know, we're less than 5 years old with these things, so they still have plenty of life in them, so we can keep going. But once again, we have 5 that are all the same age, so we have to start picking these off as we can.
What type of things does the vacuum truck vacuum?
So it's referred to as a vacuum truck because that's the mechanical name. You may have heard it called a Vector truck, but what it's used for, it has a big, large vacuum on it. And when we flush out, that's a big hose reel on the front. When we flush out culvert pipes, drainage structures, it can actually suck all that water and debris up and out, and it stores it in a tank that we can dump out. So the material storage building that we're building, on the south end of the building, we refer to as a Vector dump station. So that's what that is. That material comes back there and is able to dump out, and they call it decanting, but basically it just takes the water out, gives the time for water to basically just sift out and evaporate. And then you're left with a solid that we can load and recycle and take either to landfill or a designated area, depending on what's in it. Because if it's considered hazardous or not. So that's one thing we use it for. So cleaning and flushing drainage structures. And then the second thing is the hydro excavation. That's where we just use a high pressure wand and we just basically make a hole around where we think there could be utilities. And then we vacuum straight down and then we come back out and get it wet. It's kind of like a process trying to get down to the elevation of the bottom of where we're going to excavate. So if we're putting a culvert, 6 foot in the ground and it needs to be a 7-foot hole because you have like the grade that you have to compact underneath it, you would basically be able to go 7 foot down and make sure in a straight line that you're not going to hit any utilities as you're digging. So you would do that perpendicular to where you're going to excavate, because that'll show and expose any lines that could be hazardous to hit that may or may not have been marked. So really what it does, it's a unit that is really functional, but it's also safety sensitive. It actually helps us keep our crews safe. So getting a new one of those a few years ago was great for us. They've made a lot of improvements over the 20-year period of the one that we had that was like 18 years old at the time. So we've made some good improvements. And touch really quick on the poly tanker. We talked all about dust control. That's one of our old stainless tankers. So our poly tanker would be a big blue tank, which we may see one of those trucks out there that I can show you that this afternoon. I'm not sure, excuse me, this morning. Not sure if there's one out there or not yet, but we had one yesterday. So we'll see if we can. But as you know, we talked before, there's a 400-day lead time. They're approximately $235,000. So this is what we want to make sure we get approved for at the end of August and start that reservation process so we can get it reserved and get that machine on its way here. And then we will go into the proposals. So Tiffany has some good editing there for us. So for 2024, our proposal is to start a 5-truck a year purchase for $1.9 million, and then purchase 9 pickups of those 23 that are overdue. So that's approximately $495,000. Right now we have set for 1 grader for approximately $410,000, 1 loader for $400,000, and then 1 semi. So that's the truck that would pull that poly tanker that in theory, they both would come in at the end of next year and be here together for the following season. That's why we've offset that, as opposed to $400 and some thousand, almost 500 at once. We take smaller bites of that apple. And then to highlight the bottom font there, the total cost can always be reduced by these trade-ins, these buybacks that we talk about in auction proceeds. So that is where Mike can exercise good judgment and move these things, whether it's auction more beneficial for us, is buyback more beneficial, whatever helps the agency the most, to recognize all the proceeds we can, because that in turn turns into other.
So Adam, this says wish list for 24. Is this an annual template?
This is our goal, to stay
I mean-
on this template. Now, the 9 pickups, that may come down, that may be reduced because we may inevitably catch up to pickups. But what you'll see will filter in and out would be the loader, the semi, that may turn into a vacuum truck or a boom mower, those type of proposals. But as far as 5 trucks every year, that's something we have to sustain. And then graders per year we have to sustain. Those are the 2 that, you know, are the most needed, the most necessary, I should say.
On the 9 pickups, if you were to maintain the 9 pickups a year, does that get you caught up on the 23? Because obviously a few years out, you're gonna be
Oh, yeah.
more.
Honestly, if you did 9 pickups 2 years in a row, you would likely be way far ahead of the goal.
Okay.
So I think that number and physically will come down just because we shouldn't have to buy 9 a year, because we're starting to reduce our average
Right.
age and our average mileage down. So we're catching up to where we were way
Yeah,
deficient.
that starts to be
Same
more
way.
like 5 to 6 a year, which is probably in
Correct.
theory where we should
Within
be.
3 to
yeah.
5 years, being
Yeah.
at that 5 years.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an achievable goal because that one, we're catching up quicker than we can because you can get more for your money. As opposed to, yeah, you can't get 6th graders and, you know, as quick
Yeah.
as you can, or as affordably.
So the 9 is aggressive for a couple of years, but then come down.
Yeah, so the 9 is to push those last handful that we have that are well over 100,000 miles. Some are more than 10 years old. The ones that are like kind of the outliers. But yeah, we have no need for 9 every single year.
Of the light fleet, what would you say percentage wise is diesel versus gas?
Very minimal. At this point, we only have 2 diesel. So we have a diesel medium duty 1 ton. Or considered 1 ton, so a small dump
Yeah.
truck. And then 1 foreman truck. Really, that was just logistics for the Manchester yard because we have both their fuel tanks now have diesel in them as opposed to unleaded. It was just too hard to put just a few hundred gallons in or 1,000 gallons in a big tank because it just didn't get used as fast. So that's where we are right now with those. We don't have an intention of going very much further than that. We may have to by necessity for the medium fleet in time,
Mhm.
just simply because that may be the only opportunities we have. But as far as our foreman trucks, which are our most important pickup at this point, and the 2 superintendent units, which they can drive 1,500, so a little cheaper.
Mhm.
But the foreman, we put in 2,500s. Those are the most important ones that every year we're gonna need 3 or 4 of those. Because we just run our miles up so
Right.
quick that they get a lot of use. So
Mhm.
gas is fine for those right now.
Would it be beneficial to go to diesels on those because of the mileage?
We could, our problem is the idle time. Because if we're out at a tree or out a job, it'll idle, then we go to the next one, it idles. So we're not getting that like long run time and we're not pulling heavy weight with these trucks where we
Okay.
would really benefit from having that like good strength.
Right.
So there's a little bit of balance there. We could find benefit in it. But all in all, the way that we move throughout the county, the gas motors just get us there efficiently enough for now, because with the variable valve timing that a lot of these
Right.
8-cylinder General Motors
Mm.
motors that we have, they're pretty good at making our trucks efficient as we're driving here to there. And then the idle time isn't so hellacious on them. The diesels don't like to idle much with that diesel exhaust fluid. But all in all, yes, we could balance either or, but right now, since we're not pulling that much, we haven't pursued anything with the diesels.
Commissioner McCollum?
Adam, you said the poly tanker,
Mhm.
you're going to request that be ordered the end of August. Is that our next meeting, the 15th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and that's part of the approved 2023 budget as
Okay,
well. So that's what I mean by approved. We've already kind of worked that
Okay.
through. This is the 2024 proposal where we get the semi tractor, at least approval, so we can start ordering those to have them hopefully meet when they actually exist here and have our stickers on them.
So Adam, before we move off the slide, just to follow back up with Commissioner Fuller, ultimately, yes, we'd like to have something of a template from an equipment standpoint, whether it's ideally the 5 heavy trucks and we finally get to that appropriate number on the pickups or the light fleet as well. And then you will see that specialty in 1 grader a year. And then that specialty equipment will pretty much be as needed from there. It'll be a loader, it'll be a backhoe, be a vacuum
Yeah.
truck at some point in the future. And the poly and the tanker and all that stuff you'll see piecemeal as needed. But the the basic stuff that we use all the time. Hopefully that we can get ourselves
Mhm.
to a point where that really does become something of a template.
Yeah, so it's more systematic, because then we don't need the large scale purchase at once, 12 of these and 10 of these, and, a little more controlled for us because the shop will be able to, like we talked about with the backhoes and even the pickups, we're able to span that load out a little bit to where it's just a consistent allocation and we don't have these big peaks and
Right.
valleys
Right.
of types of equipment or ages of equipment. Because as things develop, and you'll see out there evident with the equipment, things develop quite quickly. So some of our older stuff is outdated by the time you're able to buy something new. So try to balance that a little bit so we don't just have all outdated, all brand new, all outdated, kind of filter that in a little bit. All right. So this is really quick and exciting stuff to talk about. So we have 2 slides to talk about the automatic vehicle locator, so the AVL. So this demo we wanted to do with all the new trucks. The delays have pushed us beyond that. So we're going to demo 1 heavy truck and 1 grader. So we're going to order 2 devices and have those built in to start demoing them this fall. And the reason for doing it this fall is we want a 90-day window. That's what's given by the manufacturer, the Verizon company we're going to demo this one with. We want to see some fall work. So we want to see road work with the grader and with the truck just going job to job. But then we want to see some winter time. Even if it's just salting, we just want to be able to exercise that demonstration. So that's why we reduced it down just to 2 pieces. And so we'll have likely come out of the main yard here so we can kind of keep an eye on it. But essentially what these systems will do, and we'll kind of touch on the next slide or 2, present us some type of map like this. So per the minute during the day, it's great for supervision, for the shop to look at it, to monitor the fleet, but more importantly for the communications team to kind of take that snapshot and get that posted out so people can see it. And we can see what we were seeing, it's cool little things. It's diagrams, it's stuff, it's names of the plows, it's cool stuff that we can do, but catches us up to what others are doing. But what we really need internally is something that tells us every day what our hours and what our miles are, because until we fuel, we don't really get that prompting. So for presentations like this, we have to do a lot of work behind the curtain, where it would be nice to have a system kind of tell us where it's at. Precision is great, but we only get, precision only gets numbers when we fuel. So if something's been sitting for a little while, it may have a lot of mileage, but it may get skipped. And so it may have a big increase, but it didn't get fuel. And so you run the risk of basically missing something that might be due for replacement or service. So these systems will provide us a little more prompting. Oh, we need to service that, because service is obviously what keeps these things going. So that's kind of an internal need, but externally it's something for the communications team. It catches us up to what the industry standard is at this point. So we're talking to a Verizon company, their subsidiaries that Verizon owns, to do this. Reason for that is to integrate with some of the stuff that Brent's team's doing with our signal system, because in the future, it could help us with efficiencies, which in turn making us more efficient, also lower some of the, the environmental strain, because our units aren't stopping and starting so much. So we're not, exhausting off more and more diesel fumes. We just keep a nice steady flow through some of our busy corridors that we want to plow, we need a pothole patch, whatever it may be. There's basically anything we need to do with systems like that. So we need to get that built up and start teaming with some of these vendors that can do that. So Verizon has some of that functionality. Brent's team is phenomenal at making that stuff work. So that's future plan, but that's where we're at right now. We want to push towards the future there, because we're normally at Washtenaw leaders in things. And so AVL, we're not right now. We want to be that leader eventually. So that's our goal to get there. So as I noted before, a 90-day demonstration. We want to conduct it with our equipment, our staff, on our road system during our operation. A lot of these systems you can demo / review with other people that have done it, but we really want to have it on our stuff and our people touching it. It helps our employees so they're actually able to see what we're talking about and be a part of the conversation, actually getting this to a point of fruition and actually installing it in our new equipment. Once we get final selection where we want to be with what vendor and what materials we need, then we'll start installing it as we start seeing these new trucks come through
Right.
You know, hopefully beginning of next season. But reality of it, by the time this stuff all starts moving, maybe through winter, but that's still our plan at least, because we had to recalculate a little bit because we didn't get the trucks that we thought we would when we thought we would get them. So we made a little adjustment. So when we get this stuff here in the next probably month or so, we'll stand back up our demo team. That's going to be portions of union, non-union, different departments, just kind of anybody that wants to be involved with it. Give them the opportunity to kind of see the stuff, touch it, and learn about what we're learning about at our level all the time. So that's where we are with AVL. So I will come back for sure when we finally get to that point, and we'll talk about it more specific. Fleet Path is the program that Verizon is kind of the parent of. I forget the company's name that actually developed Fleet Path, but they've since been bought out by Verizon. So they have their representatives that represent their program and service their program, work right directly with us. So you have location data. You also have equipment status, modified dashboard. And what I mean by that is that's where we're able to screen capture that and be able to put that for any social media outlets. It's really something, another tool for the communications team. We need the live feed because we need to, know the status of our fleet and kind of what roads we've been on, not been on. But we need that social media post to kind of help with people. Oh, they've plowed my subdivision, so it'll be good when I get home today. Or they haven't got there because it started snowing again. So have these options and just another tool to kind of get out to the constituents. We are going to demo forward-facing cameras like this. So you have views kind of similar to this, where we could show what we were seeing at 4 a.m. And it's another cool tool to show, what our staff actually goes through. So that's what I mean by kind of the forward-facing system and displayed through some dashboards. We'll kind of control that data, but get that information out to the public that way.
Commissioner
Does
Green.
ABL cost?
This is less than $10,000 just to start the demo. For if we bought all 60 devices, I think the current quote is less than $20,000. So it's all affordable. It's the fees that you pay, monthly for data, and then for the year, a few $1,000s per year to have the program. So it's relatively inexpensive, but there's some upkeep, and I'm sure that's where the cost would probably come in, but it's nothing that's unobtainable. It's all attainable just through our equipment budget that we already have set up. So
Commissioner McCollum.
I really, really like the one for social media. I'm
Yeah.
really liking that. And so glad that we're going to have that. I think that is the epitome of transparency.
Mhm.
And I think your presentation is awesome. I think you know a lot about facilities,
thank you. Well,
equipment.
it's our team. It's the team. They all fill the brain too. I'm just the one that makes the noise, but no, I do appreciate that. Thank you for those kind words. But yeah, it's really been a team. Like we had a lot of us that kind of put this together, get to editing, but it does come back to other departments needing things, not just, from the operations or from the facilities group, the AVL for the communications team. So they have that tool to post. Tiffany and I both experienced that at a different agency before. And it is an easy way to promote, and show what we see, to give that understanding in the reality of how big these pieces of equipment are. That's why we want to be outside and we're excited about it, because everything you can see in a picture, it fits on a slide. But, get out there and actually stand by it, and the tires are almost as tall as some of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do appreciate the kind words. Thank you. It's a lot of fun to do this. This is something I've done for a while. I really enjoy it. So this is a good opportunity to talk to everybody. So if there aren't any other questions, thank you. And then we can take a little break. And I know I kind of long-winded, but we can go see some equipment if you guys would like.
Any other questions for Adam before we adjourn? Okay. If there aren't, thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. I'm sure all of you had a finger in this, lots of numbers, lots of
Yes, every one of
pieces
them.
that went into this PowerPoint presentation. Well done.
Dan has the miracle grow for the money tree out.
Yeah, I just made, yeah, anyway, okay. So may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
Support.
If you would, Aaron.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum,
Yes.
Commissioner Jeff Smurs,
Yes.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Yes.
and Commissioner Bart Fuller.
Yes, we are adjourned. We follow you out the back door. For anyone who wants to do the little dog and pony show, We're gonna follow Adam out.
Yep.